by nature, explorers. The same curiosity that sends us to the stars at the speed of thought urges us to go there in reality. And whenever we make a great new leap, we elevate humanity, bring people and nations together, usher in new discoveries and new technologies. So remember to look up at the stars and not down at your feet.
My name is Aston and I am 8 years old. I am the junior astronomer for UK Astronomy. I am fascinated by all things space and have been since the age of 2. I love space so much that last year I wrote a fact book about our solar system called The Solar System. Today I am going to talk about space and tell you some fun facts about our amazing solar system. First of all, the sun. Surface temperature. It's around 5,500 degrees Celsius. The core temperature pipes up to 15 million degrees Celsius. It is made of helium, hard elements such as iron, copper and nickel in its core, and they fuse together to make nuclear fusion. It takes 8.5 minutes for light to reach us. The sun is approximately 5 billion years old. It has 4 billion years left before it burns out of fuel. Then it will become a red giant. Our sun is a yellow dwarf and it is a main sequence star. It is around 93 million miles from Earth. Rocky planets: Mercury, Venus, Earth and Mars. A dwarf planet is a planet that has enough gravity to become spherical and it orbits the sun, but it doesn't have enough gravity to clear the junk in its orbit. There are 8 planets in our solar system. The first rocky planet is Mercury. It is the smallest and closest to the sun. It has the thinnest atmosphere of all rocky planets. Are you thinking it's very hot? The atmosphere is very, very thin, only about 1 kilometre thick. It has thin layers down to the core, thin crust, thin mantle, and thin outer core. Venus. You may be thinking it's the second hottest because it's the second furthest away. But you are wrong. Venus is the hottest planet because it got heated up millions of years ago in its very thick atmosphere with a mass of 94.3 Earth atmospheres and thickness and density. It trapped all of the heat in the planet, heating it to around 500 degrees Celsius. The atmosphere on Venus is made of carbon dioxide and sulfuric acid clouds. It is so hot on Venus that metals like lead would be puddles of melted liquid. 1 day on Venus lasts longer than 1 Venus year. This is unusual because it spins the opposite direction of Earth and most other planets, and its rotation is very slow. It takes about 443 Earth days to spin around just once. Because it's so close to the sun, a year goes by fast. It takes 225 Earth days for Venus to go all the way around the sun. That means that a day on Venus is a little longer than a year on Venus. Do you think Venus has moons? Nope. Just like Mercury, Venus doesn't have any moons. Venus has no gravitational force pulling against it except for the sun. Earth. Earth is the third closest to the sun, which has a moon, but surprisingly its moon is the 5th biggest in our solar system. It is also the biggest rocky planet. It is the only planet that we know has life, and you are standing on the surface of it. everyone and everything that you know, except for things that float, fly and hover, don't stand on the surface. It is about 4 billion years old, created by a solar explosion in the middle of nowhere, out in space. It sent rocks and debris flying everywhere. The sun was born. Those rocks that flew everywhere were magnetic and clumped together and formed a sphere of rock. Then it got hit with asteroids that has water on them. Gas giants. There is Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus and Neptune. Jupiter is the biggest planet in the whole solar system. And if Jupiter can talk, it would be bragging to Saturn about how big it is. And Jupiter holds many world records for our solar system. So, it holds the solar record for the biggest storm in the solar system. It also holds the record for the largest moon in the solar system. It's Ganymede. The other world records that it holds, or solar records, it holds are the most moons, the thickest atmosphere, the densest planet, also one of the heaviest planets, Saturn. People say that it's an absolutely beautiful spotlight in our sky. It is slightly dimmer than Jupiter, yet slightly smaller. Now you may be thinking, well, Saturn is extremely big, like Jupiter, so it must be extremely heavy. No, you are incorrect. If you are able to get a pool or a bathtub big enough to fit Saturn inside of it, Saturn would float. Saturn only has 84.4 Earth masses. So, Saturn holds many world records, or solar records. It has the largest rings, the brightest rings, the thickest rings, the densest atmospheres, so that's still a solar record. Saturn looks beautiful. Its rings are made of dust particles, ice particles, and also rocks and massive chunks ranging from the size of a grain of salt to a human, dog, or to the size of a house, and the largest ones reach 1 kilometre wide. They are slowly getting pulled towards Saturn. The rings aren't orbiting Saturn fast enough, so they're slowly coming in. And Saturn will soon eat up its rings and gobble it. But none of us that are listening to this podcast nowadays will be alive. It will happen in millions of years. Saturn also has the weirdest poles. The poles look hexagonal shape. They look a bit like a hexagon. And they change colours. And there's a great white spot on Saturn. It moves around Saturn, and it's very slowly moving to its equator, like Jupiter's great red spot. Soon Jupiter's great red spot will get so small, you won't be able to see it through a telescope. Uranus has its catchy, funny name all because it has methane in its atmosphere, and methane smells a bit like farts. Uranus has the second most thin rings, so NASA had to send a probe behind Uranus, and they had to cut out Uranus from the picture because Uranus was reflecting so much light, just so that they could see its rings. And Uranus, we believed, got smacked by a big object, and it slowly started spinning onto its side. So, this is all a theory. So that's the only planet in the solar system that gets put as the most jokes. That's a solar record. Being named after a body part, Neptune. It has a great dark spot, yet it has been migrating to its poles and flipped. And it started migrating to the equator, and it flipped again and started migrating to its poles. And it won't stop. Neptune's great dark spot is a massive storm. nearly the same size as Jupiter's Great Red Spot, which is amazing for a planet smaller than Jupiter. Neptune is roughly the same size as Uranus, the jokester. Neptune doesn't get flipped on its side because nothing in theory has seemed to hit it. But the sad story connecting Neptune and Jupiter together. An asteroid came near Neptune. Neptune was like, what is that? So its gravitational force pulled on the asteroid, and then Neptune would have realised that it was a big asteroid. And then the asteroid smacked into Neptune and caused a big hole in the planet's atmosphere. And that caused the Great Dark Spot. And it's dark because it punched through Neptune's atmosphere. And with Jupiter's connection with Neptune, a very, very, very large asteroid came close to Jupiter. And since Jupiter has a great gravitational force, Jupiter couldn't stop the asteroid. And the asteroid, called Shoemaker-Levy, got closer and closer and smacked into Jupiter, leaving a big, visible, dark ripple in Jupiter's atmosphere. And while the asteroid broke into shreds, we can still see that ripple today, but only if we had massive telescopes. Mars is the only other planet we think has life on it, because it is still in the range of the habitable zone of the Sun. So the habitable zone is a zone where it's not too hot and not too cold. Any of you that know about the Goldilocks story, the girl goes into the house and finds the bear's porridge, and she eats the daddy's one, and it's very hot. So she's like, no! And she eats the mummy's one, and it's way too cold. Then she eats the baby's one, and it's just right. That's the exact same with Earth. Mercury and Venus are way too close to the Sun, so they're extremely hot. Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune, especially Pluto, that isn't a planet, are way too far away from the Sun. And Mars and Earth are in the Goldilocks zone. Well, Mars is it's in between the realm of being frozen to death and in the realm of getting just right. So it's in between. Mars is extremely cold. It reaches negative 60 degrees Celsius. But at its hottest, it reaches over 30 degrees. Somehow, it's just because Mars has an extremely thin atmosphere, so if humans moved there, it would have a higher chance of those humans getting cancer. The radiation punches Mars's surface, so the things that are rovering are rovers. They just rover around. They're just crawling on 6 legs or 6 wheels on the surface of Mars, like, do. Oh, I see a sign of life. Let's just explore. They are looking for signs of life on Mars. Also, Perseverance has landed in a massive crater called the Jezero crater on Mars. And the Jezero crater is believed to be an ancient lake. So that's why Perseverance is landing on it, to see if there is any signs of water there. Because then that could mean signs of life. Mars is my favourite, except for Jupiter, of course. It's all because one company, all three of them, teaming up, yet at the same time competing to put humans on Mars. So, we have Blue Origin, powered and run by Jeff Bezos, who was the richest man in the world, and he was the first person to create Amazon. And he had over £100 billion. He was nearly as rich as Bill Gates. Then we have NASA, which is a huge company. They have been going for a long time. They have a lot of money and they've funded some. They have more than Bill Gates. We have my personal favourite, SpaceX. Elon Musk owns SpaceX. And Elon Musk is now the richest man on Earth with over $180 billion. SpaceX was the first to come up with the idea of sending people onto the surface of Mars. And they have built this massive rocket called Starship, or the BFR, which stands for Big Falcon Rocket. So, we've had MK1, Starhopper, SN1, SN2, SN3, SN4, SN5, SN6, SN7, and then SN8, SN9, and SN10. SN11 is going next. SN11 is the big step. SN9 had a big boo-boo because only one Raptor engine fired out of all three. They were aiming to fire for two, but it ended up firing one. And there was a problem with the second engine, and they couldn't turn on the third for some reason, or they didn't. And the SN9 didn't have enough thrust on its side and crashed in a big boom. SN9 wanted to pull up, but it couldn't. Failures are always successes. A landing is a success. He will never give up. Have great time with your Starship experiments, Elon Musk, if you're listening. Bye, everyone, and if Elon Musk is watching, have a great life.